One trend that I noticed, and I think it's very significant, is that there's an increased focus, an increased attention that's being paid to progressive MS. And I think it's very important because this is the biggest unmet need in MS today. We have increasing number of treatments for the relapsing remitting phase of MS, and we have at the moment not much, if at all, for progressive MS. But on the other hand, there are some promises. There are trials in progressive MS, in particular ocrelizumab in primary progressive MS, that shows a lot of promise, and I hope it will become an acceptable treatment for progressive MS. The other important thing, again, that's being paid attention to these days is on the other end of the spectrum, basically, the early treatment. And that becomes more and more important, and there are intentions to embark on large studies looking at whether it's important to hit it early with very potent drugs or go into the classical escalation approach. I think that's another very important area that will answer a lot of unanswered questions that have been put so far. Coming back to the progressive MS, I think there are some early trials that are leading to larger scale trials, such as the statins trial, that again, if successful, will be a breakthrough in MS treatment. I think that's what's important new developments. What I would like to see more of, which has been neglected in the last few years, there hasn't been much progress in symptomatic treatment of MS. There haven't been breakthroughs in this area, and it's a really, really under-researched and underserved area. I think that would be the main important next focus. ECTRIMS is becoming very big, so if you go to some good presentations, you miss some other very good presentations. But what I was impressed with and what I heard were some very interesting epidemiology presentations. There is evidence that people who start off with benign MS end up continuing by and large having benign MS. So that's something that goes against what we previously thought. There's evidence that the epidemiology of MS is changing. It doubled over the last 60 years in Denmark. In females only, it hasn't increased much at all, or at all in men. That's again something very interesting, something worthwhile looking into. There's evidence that the incidence, age of onset is increasing, so people develop MS at a later age than a few decades ago. So these are very interesting things that show that something changes in the biology of MS. So these are things that I found, that I heard being presented today, that are very interesting. People embarking on MS to become specialists in MS, first of all, need to have a much more comprehensive training than we used to do 20, 30 years ago. MS is immunology, is imaging, things that are quite specialized and that we need to have a good knowledge of when we deal with MS patients. So they need to be very knowledgeable about immunology, about imaging, possibly about genetics, about pharmacology, things that were had only a minor role in the knowledge, skills that one needed to acquire to become an MS specialist even 20 years ago. So it's comprehensive. And I mentioned immunology because for a long time, there was this debate between immunologists and neurobiologists whether knowing immunology is important for MS. And clearly it is, because all the drugs that we use now are acting on the immune system, and all the genes that are involved in the MS pathology, in the MS susceptibility at least, the great majority of them are genes of the immune system. So I think a good knowledge of immunology will be important for future MS specialists.